Welcome back, everyone. It is Charlize from Forward Chess, and today I'm joined by Grandmaster Ian Rogers, the legendary player from Australia. Hi, Ian. Thank you for joining us. How are you today?
Very good. How are you?
I'm good too, thank you. We're on opposite sides of the world, so it's really cool to be speaking to you today. Uh, of course, you have a few books on forward chess. I want to get into your endgame, practical endgame guide. But before we do anything, I've noticed that you have a particular sense of humor, which I quite enjoy in the naming of your books. Like your Oops books inspired by Britney Spears and the world's most boring
Indeed.
book. Tell me a bit about this, where this influence comes from.
Well, when I was sort of immediately thinking of Britney Spears when I first wrote the Oops books because she's the first person you think of when you say Oops.
Hmm.
I'm really struggling though for lyrics for the third Oops book, which I'm writing at the moment. I may have to switch to Taylor Swift. I'm not sure, but
Ah.
yeah. So something like "Oops, I resigned but shook it off," or something along those lines. But I
Yeah.
haven't got a title yet, and that's a bit corny. So we'll see. The world's most boring chess book. Well, when it was first proposed to me by Laszlo Hazai, who'd done a lot of work in the area of isolated D pawns, um, I said nobody's going to buy it.
Mm.
And I said, "You'll sell 10 copies." And he said, "Yes, but those 10 will be extremely strong players. So it'll be worth it." And then I thought, okay, what's the only way to make this book sell some? And I thought clickbait. And the
Hmm.
world's most boring chess book, it does what it says on the cover.
Hmm.
And some people I know have bought it just because they want to have it on their shelf to show off to people saying, "See, I've got the world's most boring chess book."
Yeah.
So it worked somewhat. Yep.
So you figured out how to clickbait readers with catchy titles and book covers.
Not deliberately, but once Oops worked, yeah, absolutely.
And Oops really did work. You have a cult following. Even our forward chess readers absolutely love the books. You said in your intro that you weren't really expecting this kind of reaction, that you found a lot more empathy from the readers. Tell me what it says about what you learned about your readers in that whole process.
Well, first of all, I learned that even really top players have a secret. They've resigned, or their opponent resigned in a winning or drawn position, and it's not publicized. It's embarrassing one way or the other. It's embarrassing to win like that. It's embarrassing to lose like that. So
Mm.
uh, so many people had experienced it in classical games, that I thought, yeah, well, it's not surprising they're empathetic because they know it can happen to anyone. And yeah, I mean, my new one is sort of Oops the Records, where I've got the worst resignation of all time, the most romantic, the shortest, all this sort of
Oh.
stuff. I mean, did you know in a Soviet championship, a player resigned in order to meet up with a date who became his wife of the next 50 years?
Ah,
Um, so,
that's a sweet story.
yeah, and she was late, so he didn't need to resign too.
No.
Uh, so,
Wow.
and anyway, all sorts of stories like that.
Yeah.
And so it's going to be fun. So, of course, the worst resignation of all time is when you've got mate in one instead of resigning. And I found three examples of that, but only one that's absolutely confirmed as 100% legit. One was in a World Rapid and Blitz between two top grandmasters, which was super embarrassing for them. But yeah, one classical example where both players thought that the wonderful combination was working, and so they thought nothing was wrong. And then the guy who resigned was driving home, and he thought, maybe in the final position, maybe I. No, I couldn't have played mate in one. No. And so he got home, set up the board, and then realized that life was very, very unfair.
It's tough.
So, yeah. So anyway, so people resigning in good positions is always fun.
How do you find these stories, especially, this niche Soviet one at the date? What kind of work goes into finding those?
Well, I certainly, if I see any examples, I email the players and ask them what the story is. But that only applies to people who are alive. But the romance one was sent to me by I probably should Mikhail Golubev, who's a grandmaster under fire in Odessa, who decided to distract himself from the bombs by searching old Soviet literature for examples of oops, because he
Wow.
knew I was working on the project, and he found about 16, including this one from the 1967 Soviet Championship. And yeah, so I've had a lot of help too. People just send me examples. Lev Sarkis, who's not so healthy, distracted himself. He sent me 4 examples from his own tournament play, which was the highest I've ever had from a grandmaster.
Hmm.
And yeah, I've just had a lot of help. It's been great. Once the
Yeah.
first one came out, a flood of stories came in.
And I think that means a lot to the reader to see these stories and from top grandmasters that they're just human, right? Everyone sort of makes mistakes. Do you think that's
Yes.
in general what the audience is like today, especially, with the rise of streaming and, the streamers playing kind of 1200 level chess, sometimes blundering their queens? Do people like to see these kind of things?
Well, it's too easy in Rapid and Blitz in a way. There's so many weird things that happen. Nakamura resigns against Carlsen in a winning position in a Rapid game. Sure, it's a shock, but under that sort of time stress, lots of weird things happen, and it is
Mm,
entertaining, but it's also a bit disappointing sometimes. You think, that they've just been unlucky rather than extremely stupid. And
yeah.
yeah, so I think the fact that people do this when they've got lots of time on the clock, and they just make this bizarre decision, um, is quite just extraordinary. And yet it happens to people, at least, well, almost everyone at least once in their career. But Magnus Carlsen, he's been on the right side 3 times, maybe 4 actually, but he's never resigned an equal or drawn position. So that's
Mm,
impressive.
of course, I don't think we'd expect him even to accept a draw in a drawn position. He's going to grind that out.
Indeed, yes, as we saw in Malmo.
Let's speak about your latest book, your practical endgame guide. This is a little bit different to the others, a more serious title, kind of a more serious endgame topic, which seems, a lot of people are scared to get into. You even mentioned that people are averse. They don't really want to study endgames. Why is that?
Well, it's difficult. At least it can be very difficult. If you sit down with Turetsky, unless you've played an endgame in that particular position that he shows, you're really not going to remember a lot of what he shows you. You need to play it and then look it up.
Mm,
So there are very few books that give you general advice to say what's easy and what's difficult. That is, what do you need to play perfect? What sort of position do you need to play perfectly in which case your chances are not great, or what position you just need to know general ideas, and then you can hold it or win it just by moving forward. So I think that wasn't really explained well in literature, and also I think people just don't have the I don't know the time anymore. The 30 seconds per move in classical, they don't have that time to
mm.
play end games well, and therefore they're more scared of them.
Yeah. And I think from my experience as a player myself and, my friends, we kind of think that these end games are never going to come up in our games. So what's the point in memorizing something if it's not going to
Yeah,
come up? But it
true.
is useful, right? Because you're learning more. It's chess as well. It's not necessarily a scenario that will arise.
Indeed, yeah, and I think that what you learn from endgames, especially with regard to perceived pressure, also applies to middle games. So, for example, that Carlsen game I mentioned against Dogmas in Malmo, he explained it really well at the end. He said, "Yeah, it might be." It was never completely okay for black, even though the computer was showing zeros, because I had ideas. I could create perceived threats. They may
Mm,
not win, but they're enough to worry the opponent. And you saw Odogmus panicking with this F5 move because he thought maybe Carlsen's king was going to invade on the queen side, and that was going to be really difficult. So he felt he had to force things. Suddenly he had to play perfectly in order to hold, and that's when it
mm.
becomes impossible. And he made one mistake after that, and he died. So that's the perfect winning a drawn position, which Carlsen is the absolute expert at.
Yeah.
Your opponent doesn't know whether your threats are real or just perceived, and they try to stop everything. And very often they panic, do something that actually helps you.
What about Magnus's game against Van Foreest earlier in the tournament when he lost that end game? What do you think went wrong?
He was unbelievably slack when he first went into it. He could have
Mm,
put his knight on f6 and then laughed at his opponent. And after that, I suspect that he was annoyed with himself for allowing it to go from trivial to I have to be precise. And that's when people go wrong. And
mm,
even Carlsen couldn't keep the level up. He had, according to the computer, he had a draw a few minutes before the end. But the game was never going to go perfectly computer style, but he was always under pressure, real pressure, and eventually Van Foreest found a great way to win. So I wasn't surprised at the result once the knight got caught on the other side, whether
mm.
or not it was losing or not. Maybe the young Carlsen would have saved it, but it's tough. Anyone who has to make a series of perfect moves is unlikely to hang on if it persists for too long.
Right. Especially in the end game, right? Low time and
Yes,
there's so many
where every move
options.
decides the game.
Yeah.
The importance of each move is exaggerated in the end game because in a pawn enemy you can go from winning to losing in one move,
Mm,
just with one inaccuracy, and the stakes are much higher. If you put your wrong rook on d1 in a middle game, well, you might find one of your rooks isn't doing much, but that's the worst that can happen to you.
yeah.
Whereas you put the king on a wrong square in an endgame and you die.
Yeah. And in the end game, I want to talk about the practicality of your book because there are so much to memorize in the end game, as we spoke about, these positions that might not come up. But you are specifically having the practical word in the title of the book, which is very exciting to me, especially someone who doesn't want to sit and memorize things for very long. Tell me about this practical approach you have.
Well, first of all, when I look at positions that you need to know, I tell you whether they are easy or difficult. You want to steer for the easy ones where you have a general principle to follow and avoid the difficult ones where you have to play perfect moves. And so every endgame I look at in the first half of the book, which is called The Knowledge, I look at it from the point of view of if you got this position, would you be able to hold it? Or
Mm,
do you need to know one technique to hold it? And once you know that, everything's easy. And so and then the second half, I look at more other techniques. I think the first part was inspired a little bit by Arthur van der Outerwatering's chess pattern recognition because he named a lot of his techniques. So a knight on the sixth rank, or anyway, he had names for all sorts of positional assets. And I thought, okay, well, there aren't enough names in Endgame, so I've got the hanging on to the back of the pawn defense and various other things that are easier to remember
mm,
than particular moves, and hopefully some of those will stick. And of course, even when you're growing up, you learn names for particular checkmates. Say, I was really impressed at a trivia night in Iceland where a Magnus Carlsen, who was the main competitor, myself and Peter Doggers, he and John Ludwig Hammer, Magnus knew Anastasia's mate, for example, which I thought was quite
mhm,
obscure, and you had to have read Renaud and Cahn's The Art of the Checkmate. But
mhm.
he knew this sort of thing, and it was probably easier to remember that checkmate if you said, "Oh, yes, that's an epaulette mate, or that's Anastasia's mate, or whatever." So Yeah, I think those
Hmm.
things help in your understanding, and they were never applied to endings. So I've got various techniques. It's no use calling it Philidor's defense because there are 15 Philidor's defense in all sorts of endings. But if you call it, I don't know, well, as I say, hanging on to the pawn defense, which applies in queen endings as well,
Mm.
then it's easier to check if that technique works in the position you've got.
Yeah, and it's using like simple language for really any player to think of during the
Mm.
game and to tie
Yeah.
to.
Well, in normal endgame books, they talk about a sixth rank defense
Mm.
in a rook and pawn versus rook endgame. And the only problem with that is that it's also a fifth rank defense and a fourth rank defense. So
Mm.
you can apply it much earlier and save yourself the trouble. But
Mm.
it's still a name, and people can remember it, and they put their rook on the sixth rank, and everything's okay.
Yeah. There are quite a few in-game books in the chess world today, right? I mean, they've been for many
Hmm.
years. So, apart from the practical approach, tell me about why your book stands out.
Well, first of all, I'm really the well, I'm in the mold of say Shereshevsky, but I think mine stands out because of the names I give to pieces, like the Tricky Knight or the Hyperactive King, this sort of thing, which gives you an idea of what you should be trying to do.
Mm.
Yeah, most people when they sit down to an ending don't think, okay, the first thing I've got to try to do is charge my king up the board. But it's generally useful. Okay, you might judge if there are too many pieces on the board. Maybe it's not such a great idea, but in any knight or bishop ending, your king's the best piece on the board. So, and most people use their knight or their bishop rather than charge the king as far as it can go. So, by using terms like hyperactive, I'm trying to convince people that this is something that needs to be done quickly, if you like.
Mm.
The king won't stand for sitting on the back rank for too long. And yeah, also all sorts of other various techniques. There's lots of techniques for winning drawn positions or drawing winning position. Drawing losing positions and so on that actually have a name. And I try to encourage people to think, okay, does my position fit into this category or that category? And then you go back to the first part where you say, okay, is it going to lead to a particular ending, and is this ending going to be holdable for me,
Mm.
or has my opponent got good practical chances? There are lots of drawn endings which you can aim for because your chances of winning them are excellent. The top players know about rook and bishop against rook, though you only need one good technique to draw it.
Mm.
And I think that's where Carlsen stands out. Early in his career, he lost a lot of basic rook endings and even not so basic ones. And then after that year with Kasparov, the coaching with Kasparov, he came out and he won a rook and F and H pawn endgame against Lecco, playing perfectly. He just knew what he needed to aim for, and generally what he could win even if it was drawn. And previously he was losing those endings when he was defending them.
Mm.
Now his hit rate is fantastic. So he needed that basic knowledge to know not only what was drawn and what was winning, but what was really difficult for his opponent to defend. And he's over the years he's completely mastered that. It's a long time since he got coaching from Kasparov, of course.
But it's such a good foundation for players to have.
Yeah, I recommend it to every player. Get a
Mm.
year with Kasparov, and then you'll become a much better player. Yeah.
Every player, there you go. Who do you think, who do you say that your book is catered to? Which rating group exactly?
Um, I thought it was for young players who knew the basics of a pawn ending or this sort of king and pawn versus king and very basic endings, but didn't really know where to go from there. But I did have a 2300 proofreader who said he learned a couple of things from it. So I was
Okay.
happy with that.
Wow.
And yeah, I mean, all of this, the genesis of it came in some articles I wrote 25 years ago for Chess Life, called "The Lazy Player's Guide to Endgames." And then after that, I got a request from New in Chess to write "The Lazy Player's Guide to Chess." in covering middle games and openings and so on. And I said, look, first of all, lazy players will only read 30 pages, so you definitely don't want a whole book. And secondly, it's really not possible to play chess without calculating, being lazy and so on. So you can't
Yeah.
become a really good player while you're lazy. And I realized that the
Mm.
Lazy Player's Guide to Endgames was probably not exactly what I meant, but it was more practical, not getting deep into variations, but learning general principles and techniques.
Mm.
And so there's, the weird thing about my Endgame book being on forward chess is it's probably got fewer variations than almost any book on the platform, because it's trying to explain things rather than show long lines.
Yeah. So in a way, this book has been 25 years in the making since your lazy days. Kind of.
In a way, in fact, it all started in August last year when I was going down to Melbourne to see my father, who was turning 98, and he had COVID, so we couldn't visit. And so I sat down and said, okay, I'm going to write this book that I've been meaning to write for ages. And it was printed and out within 8 weeks.
Wow.
So I had it all in me. I just had to put it
Put
down
it.
and
Mm.
and then have it proofed and fixed up and some examples added by the proofreaders and so on. And eventually, it came out in November. So it was a very, very fast project, but as you say, 25 years in the making.
And let's speak a bit about the Forward Chess platform and the rise of, digital books. Of course, you came up with physical books. Tell me about what you prefer nowadays. You still prefer the physical book, or do you see the benefits
I,
in
I,
having online?
I do, but I don't think, for example, my World's Most Boring Chess book is really easy to read at all in the physical form. I think
Mm.
unless you've got forward chess or similar and you're able to go through the variations quickly, then it's really almost impossible. I mean, there'll be, as I said, there'll be 10 players in the world who can follow the variations in their head. So I expect Sindarov and Gukesh and so on will be able to follow everything, but it really takes every rabbit hole and takes it to the end and says this queen ending is winning now. So even the pawn ending chapter in the World's Most Boring Chess book, some of the variations are ridiculously long because you simply have to see to the end to see whether it's winning or drawing. And
Mm.
so it's quite a reader unfriendly book, but on a digital platform it gets a lot better. Whereas, I probably think the Practical Endgame book is better in book form than on a digital platform. But since it's not available outside Australia in book form, Forward Chess is the best you're going to get.
And do you think that having books, courses online, we've got the digital ebooks, has that changed the way that readers absorb information?
Absolutely, and so has Chessable as well.
Mm.
There are kids who have never picked up a physical book, but they've read a lot and understood a lot, and there's lots of factors going into that. I mean, before Forward Chess took the lead, there were quite a few chess book platforms, some better than others, but Forward Chess is a place where almost all the leading titles can be found, which is really
Yeah.
valuable. And of course, Chessable has changed the way people learn and the use of video as well. So it's a completely new environment. But I think when I also brought out, you don't see this in Forward Chess, but I also brought out the Practical Endgame book to make it as attractive as possible to study, especially for kids. So the diagrams are big, the fonts are big. You've got weird diagrams with 4 kings on them, and there's large diagrams and so on, and everything that makes it wanting you to sort of open a page and actually have a look at it.
Mm.
And I think that's necessary nowadays to drag people into a physical book, or young people. Older people
Yeah.
still buy chess books.
And there we have specific features as well. Chessable has many to forward chess. We've got the engine that you're able to click on while you're analyzing position. You've got guess the move, playing against the computer. How do you see the benefits of these features in your training
Yeah,
reading a
well,
book?
play against the computer is invaluable to test whether the techniques I learn can actually stand up
Mm,
against a perfect opponent, and that's really useful. I mean, you see that also with Lead Chess and Chess.com, but only with particular endings and not with someone, not with a book giving you advice, and then you can refer back to that advice and try again against the computer. So that can be
mm,
very useful to see if you've actually learnt it. So yeah, there's plenty of advantages to a digital book for a serious student, and yet I'm expecting most of my readers will not be that serious. They'll want to pick up tips and hope that they can apply them. If you want to be a perfect endgame player, well, you get Zaretsky's
mm.
endgame manual. But if you want to play better endgames, then yeah, my book, Shereshevsky's book, are good starts.
Yeah. That's why I say your audience kind of ranges from younger beginners to 2300s even, because I don't think anyone except Magnus plays perfect endgames in chess.
Aronian is pretty close. Aronian
Okay.
is the guy who kept beating Magnus in these basic rook endgames.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, maybe not the Aronian of today, who's a little bit older and weaker, but he was very, very strong in the ending.
Yeah. Is there any other particular player who you enjoy watching in terms of endgames nowadays?
That's a very good question. Magnus really stands out, but he doesn't play very much
Mm.
because yeah, you don't get perfect endgames from Magnus in a lot of the events he plays nowadays.
Yeah.
You get sudden blunder, but yeah, I was impressed by Dogmas until he lost to Carlsen. The two Queen
Mm.
endings he drew in Malmo were, I thought, very matured pieces of defence from a 14-year-old. So, yeah, when people say he's
Mm.
the real deal, I tend to agree,
Yeah.
and
I
so I'll
mean,
keep watching him. Yeah,
yeah, naming
yeah,
him, and he's the youngest
yeah,
of the group.
yeah. You
Wow.
also need to have bad openings in order to really learn how to defend bad endgames. So,
Yeah.
yeah, you don't see Sindarov playing bad endgames very much because
Mm.
his openings are too good.
That's true, actually. So, I mean, openings are so refined nowadays with computers and seconds that the players aren't getting to bad positions. Oh,
Well, one side is, the other one isn't. So
yeah.
Sindarov's opponents are a lot of the time,
Yeah.
but the technique for steering things to a draw when you have the slightest disadvantage is very sophisticated in modern players. So you see
Mhm.
someone like Giri, he's got a spidey sense of danger, and he can immediately say, "Okay, I need to steer this to a draw." And
Yeah.
yeah, there are others who are very good at that. Caruana slightly less so, but that's because he often plays for a win a little bit too long. But there's plenty of really good young players who have a great sense of danger, and
Yeah.
uh, and yeah, but of course they also know what they can swap off into and what is going to be really bad, and so you rarely find them swapping off into a hopeless ending. They'd rather stay in a middle game if it's going to be
Mm.
really bad. Whereas a weaker player can't really judge. Maybe that ending's holdable, maybe it isn't, but the really
Yeah.
top player know more about that.
Yeah. Well, my final question to you is what advice would you give to a player if they had to spend a whole month, 1 month, dedicating their time to learning a specific endgame skill? What should it be?
I would say learning how to turn an equal ending into something significant, and that would involve especially looking at Magnus's games,
Mm.
and possibly illegally downloading one chapter of my book.
Yeah.
Because it's not worth buying the whole book if you just want to learn that. Uh, and that's probably one of the hardest things to do. But
Mm,
you see the rewards in players like Magnus who are not scared of 0.0. A lot of
mm,
people sort of stop analysing when it's 0.0. But I think it was the Australian chess teacher Cecil Purdy who said, no position is truly equal, at least no position other than king and rook against king and rook, because always someone is trying to win. There's one
mm.
side that can make an effort. And therefore, you have to be able to resist that effort if you're defending, and you have to be able to work out what sort of methods increase your advantage. And that is really valuable, to know how to neutralize someone who has pressure against you, and to know how to increase that pressure, even if, as I say, it's perceived pressure rather than real threats.
Yeah. So how would one go about that, analyzing Magnus's game? How would you suggest it? Especially nowadays, with in the computer age, everyone just toggles that
Yep.
engine on immediately, but that
Okay.
doesn't seem right.
Go to move 50 of games he won. And then if the computer says 0.0, then have a look at how he manages to win from there.
Mm, okay. Well, I think that's something I'm excited to do now that I have some advice. So thank you very much for joining us and talking to us about endgames, making them also seem fun and important, practical play.
No worries. Thanks for doing the interview. Cheers.
Thank you so much.